What the hell is going on? You didn't make lunch today. Over the phone, my husband abruptly yelled at me. He seemed irritated that I hadn't made his lunch and that I had been away from home. I told him to look after himself while I was gone, but he said, "Look, you're a housewife, right? Why you're skipping? You're a housewife who skips duties?" My husband didn't seem convinced. What a small man he is to make such a big deal about not having lunch for one day. I was fed up with him doing all of the housework and then taking it out on me when things didn't go his way. My mother-in-law had a faint smile on her face as she stood beside me, listening to my husband's yelling over the phone. My name is Emily. I live with my husband and 2 children. Seth and Ray are twin boys who are 2 years old. I am so happy as the mother of twins who are so adorable. Raising these children is unquestionably the source of my current happiness. Nicholas, my husband, is a typical businessman. My husband's family owns a Japanese-style confectionery store in a shopping arcade corner. I quit my job shortly after my marriage, and I'm now assisting my in-laws with their store. With a light heart, I began working at the shop. But the work at the confectionery was much busier than I had anticipated. I not only serve customers in the store with its colorful selection of wagashi, but I also make my own sweets in the back kitchen. I have to be in the kitchen from early morning to prepare the sweets on time during the busiest times of the year. I continue to assist after the birth of my twins. I would sometimes stand in the store with my children on my back. Their cries would sometimes carry into the store, even when I was babysitting them away from the store. While caring for the young children, I continued to work at the store. My husband, on the other hand, was unconcerned about the wagashia. "Hey, do you still have no plans to take over the confectionery business?" I asked. We've discussed it several times, but my husband appears to have no intention of taking over the confectionery business. "I've told you numerous times. I'm not going to take over the store. Isn't wagashia so lame these days? The number of people in the shopping arcade is decreasing year by year, and if I take over the confectionery business now, I will have no future." My husband has no desire to take over the wagashia of his family. Of course, he can't take over the store right now because he works for a larger corporation. But I like my in-law's store and don't want to see it go away. "Are you going to the pachinko again today, Nicholas?" "Sure. Of course I am. Is it harmful? What I do on my day off is entirely up to me." On holidays, my husband always goes out to play pachinko. He even gets in line to play pachinko as soon as it opens. Despite this, he ignores the housework. I did all of the cooking, cleaning, and laundry, as well as the housework. Moreover, the most important aspect of child rearing was completely left to me. My husband spent the time at his own pace while I was busy with housework, child care, and the confectionery shop. My in-laws are getting older, and my workload at the confectionery shop is increasing. My in-laws, particularly my mother-in-law, were extremely understanding of my situation. "Emily, you help us with the store, and we are very grateful. Thank you so much for everything." This was how my mother-in-law always expressed her gratitude. She's a lovely lady who has nothing to do with the wife-mother-in-law situation. Her gentle and kind smile warmed my heart. "I really need Nicholas's assistance," she explained. "He no longer appears to be interested in the confectionery." My mother-in-law always looked sad when we talked about my husband. I suppose she really wants him to take over the company. But her husband refused to agree. "Well, we're lucky to have such a wonderful wife, Emily. We should stop being greedy." My mother-in-law lavishes praise on me. She also values my assistance at the store while raising my children. When I'm at the store, she babysits the kids with my father-in-law, which is a big help. And my mother-in-law has become my go-to person with whom I can talk about anything. Of course, she listens to my complaints of my husband. Ironically, the more distance I feel from my husband, the stronger my bond with my mother-in-law grows. The presence of my in-laws was very reassuring to me right now. With such a life, the days fly by in a blur. Raising 2 children means that each day flies by with no time to think about anything else. It's almost the end of the year, and the wagashiya is getting busy. It coincides with the end-of-year gift-giving season, and we are in transition. After consulting with my in-laws, I decided to stay at home this year and focus on the wagashi preparation. I informed my husband of this. What? Are you taking the kids and staying at my parents' house? My husband was clearly upset. I explained to him that I would only be staying for one night to assist on a busy day. How about the housework? The response was as expected. It is a more serious problem for my husband, who does not do any housework at all. If I do not do housework for even one day, he gets upset, even if it's the busy season for the confectionery. This time, I'll only be away for one night. So can't you be cooperative during that time? It's only a single day, so everything should be fine, right? If you get hungry, you prepare some meals. There will be no laundry to do if it is only for one day. I told my husband that there was nothing to be concerned about, but he continued to complain. You know what? You're still a housewife, aren't you? I tell you this again. I'm the family's breadwinner. Who do you believe is in charge of feeding our 2 children? My husband began to grumble. I didn't want to talk to him any longer. I didn't say anything else, and I took the kids to my in-laws' house without my husband's permission. I had a lot of work waiting for me when I arrived at my parents' house. It was the end of the year, and business was brisk at the wagashiya. Orders for year-end gifts were pouring in faster than usual, and my decision to stay and assist was not wrong. The creation of gift items begins with the assembly of empty boxes. This is a surprisingly difficult job, especially at the end of the year when hundreds of boxes must be made for year-end gifts. My in-laws and I divided up the box-making duties. After the first day at my in-laws' house, I was exhausted, but the next day I had to work hard from early in the morning to make wagashi. To prepare for the next day, I decided to go to bed early. And by the time dawn arrived, I had already started working. While the kids were still sleeping, my in-laws and I stayed in the kitchen and worked quietly on the wagashi. The sun had risen before I knew it, and the morning of December had arrived. With the fresh air and morning sun, we decided to take a break and eat breakfast. The kids were already awake and ready for breakfast. I hurriedly prepared breakfast for them and served it at the table, and they came running up to me smiling. My in-laws, sons, and I were all seated around the table. My phone rang right then and there. It was my husband who called. What the heck is going on? You didn't make lunch today. My husband yelled at me as soon as I picked up the phone. He seemed irritated that there was no lunchbox, which was supposed to be available at all times. I told him to make his own lunch while I was gone, but had he forgotten? What do you mean, avoiding housework? When I told my husband that he should prepare the food himself, he seemed unconvinced. He accuses me of laziness. What a prick he is to make such a big deal about not having lunch only for one day. He leaves everything up to me, and when things don't go his way, he transforms into this. I was shocked, and my in-laws appeared to be as well, because they could clearly hear my husband yelling over the phone. Finally, my husband rambled on about what he wanted to say before abruptly hanging up the phone. Even though breakfast has just been served, the living room of my in-laws' house was quiet for a while. My husband lost his cool in an unreasonable way, so it was as expected. The kids seemed to sense the atmosphere and refused to eat their breakfast. My mother-in-law cheerfully said "itadakimasu" and urged my sons to eat their breakfast as well, as if to draw out the atmosphere. She then turned to face me and said, "Why don't you divorce my son, Emily?" My movement comes to a halt as I reach for my tea. I never expected my mother-in-law to say something like that to me. My father-in-law was eating his breakfast quietly, with an indescribable expression on his face. I believe I was a little out of line, but now that you've been told something like that, I believe you've come to your senses. As she spoke to me, my mother-in-law smiled. It seems that when a person is truly disgusted, there is no choice but to laugh. I feel terrible for you as a mother. You are no longer required to be merciful to my son. Allow your emotions to guide you. My mother-in-law had probably figured out how I felt about him by now. My mother-in-law was on my side. My mother-in-law is always supportive and encouraging. My father-in-law never speaks, but he nods in agreement to my mother-in-law's words. The presence of my in-laws was reassuring to me, and it was on this day that I returned home. I waited for my husband's return with my mind made up. My husband returned home later in the evening. He had a tense expression on his face, as if he was still upset that I hadn't prepared his lunch. I asked him to take a seat because I needed to speak with him. I motioned for him to take a seat. "What do you want to talk about?" He cocked his brow and looked at me. I told him to sit down again, ignoring his mood. I held out the divorce papers when he sat down grimly. "I'm going to divorce you." The words divorce slipped out of my mouth. My husband's grumpy expression abruptly changed to one of surprise. "Why did you say divorce so abruptly? Are you kidding me? The kids are still so young." My husband was in a panic, not understanding why I was seeking a divorce. He's adamant that he does not want a divorce. In addition, there is no reason for me to divorce in the first place. So he tried to avoid the discussion by claiming it was invalid. "There's a reason." I stopped him from fleeing. Then I pulled a few photos from an envelope on the table. There was a photo of my husband walking with a woman holding hands. "Didn't you say you go to pachinko on your days off? What exactly is this? You appear to be having a good time." When he saw the photo, my husband's face turned pale. I pressed him to tell me what was going on. "No, listen to me." He was making up some nonsense excuse about how she was just an acquaintance. "She's a junior employee at your company, isn't she?" My husband's movement ceased when I mentioned the identity of the woman in the photograph. My husband had an affair with a younger woman who worked at the same company as him. I had been suspicious of his behavior and had discussed it with my mother-in-law for some time. My mother-in-law suggested I hire a detective to investigate an affair. The findings of the subsequent investigation astounded me. My husband had entered a pachinko parlor with a woman and then gone directly to her room. "I have more photos. You two are very close, so the investigator could take many photos. Would you like to see more?" When confronted with undeniable evidence, the husband finally confessed. He readily admitted that he was a pachinko fan, that he had a romantic relationship with this woman, and that he had been visiting her room during the day. I'm sorry, Emily. I was just experimenting with fire. I'm sorry for my kids. I'm leaving this girl right now, so please don't divorce me. My husband, who was no longer at my mercy, apologized emphatically. However, I will never forgive him. I'm dead set on getting a divorce. I'm not joking. I've been assisting at your parents' home. While babysitting, I have taken care of things that you do not want me to do. I've informed your father and mother about this. My in-laws, I told my husband, were on my side, not his. They have both stated that they will assist me in any way they can. We work together, so there was plenty of time to talk. They explained. They were both furious at you. Of course, I informed them that we were divorcing. My husband completely lost his cool. He broke down in tears. Please, I would never do a thing like this. My caution appeared to have completely overwhelmed him. He just kept muttering that he didn't want a divorce after that. I can't do it with you any longer. I will make certain that you pay alimony and child support. I noticed him of a divorce. My husband begged for more forgiveness on his knees, but I refused to listen to him. As a result, my husband and I divorced. I insisted on alimony payments from both my husband and the woman with whom he had an affair. My husband had to pay child support for our children as well. My husband then chose to resign from his job with the woman who had lost her position in the company after the company discovered their affair. My in-laws were furious and informed my husband that he would be cut off from his family and barred from the family home. My husband, who has no one to rely on, is now compelled to work from morning to night doing manual labor in order to pay his monthly bills. After the divorce, I continue to work at the wagashia. My in-laws asked me to continue. I enjoy working in the store, and of course, I need to support my children. My in-laws want me to run the store after they retire. They intend to eventually give me the store and their home. Naturally, I intend to take over. In the future, I will be the confectionery's proprietress. I will continue to work hard at my job and raise my children while looking ahead.